You're listening to Walk It Out with Trisha Goyer, where we discover what it looks like to follow God and be swept away on the journey of a lifetime. Author of over 70 books, mom of 10, yes, 10, homeschooler and speaker, Trisha Goyer will explore what radical obedience to God's word looks like. It's time to hear from God lovers who've dared to say yes. Listen in to heart chats and learn how others overcame doubts and fears. Discover how God used ordinary people to impact others one step at a time. If you're ready to get radical, get going, and make a difference in this world, you're at the right place. Here's your host, prolific writer, world traveler, people lover, and mega nap taker, Trisha Goyer.
Well, friends, today on Walk It Out, we're going to be talking about surrendering dreams of perfection for a life of fulfillment in Jesus. And, you know, as someone who has adopted 7 kids, I have surrendered perfection a long time ago. But I am so thankful to be talking to our guest today, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. Meg Apperson is a blogger, a homeschooling mother, and a pastor's kid. She and her husband, Cody, live in North Carolina with their 4 children. Meg is a passionate lover of words, an advocate for medically fragile children, and inspiring minimalist. And you can learn more about her and her family at fourfinelives.com, which we'll have all those links in the show notes. But first of all, welcome, Meg.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad you're here, and I'm trying to think. It must be at least a couple years ago. I think I connected with you, or I found you. I don't know, we really connected, but I found you on Instagram and just kind of follow your life and all you're doing. And you have a new book talk about just surrendering those dreams for perfection, and the title is Sky Full of Stars. So I'm excited to talk about the book and your life. But for those who may not be familiar, can you just give us an overview of just your family?
Yeah, so you kind of covered a little bit of it in the intro. My name is Meg, and I'm married to my husband, Cody, and we have 4 kids. I have an almost 12-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, and then the baby is almost 2, and we are very, very busy. I wrote the book because our 3rd child, a daughter named Avery, was born with some very unexpected, severe birth defects. And I had been blogging a little bit prior to her birth, just miscellaneous things, just frivolity. I just thought, that I could just write about anything. We were homeschooling and, life was so sweet and predictable and everything I'd pictured it would be. And then, we had this baby and everything just exploded. And, the book is just about that journey to where we are now. We added a little surprise baby a couple years ago. And that's where we are now. We took a break from homeschooling for a time after my daughter Avery was born. And then we started back up about 2 years ago once she was really stable and I was able to be at home more with my, my children who were school age. And so that's what we're doing now.
That's what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, with, I had 3 kids that I raised to adulthood, and then we adopted 7, and their special needs are minor. We have dyslexia. One of them has an autoimmune disease, so there's medical visits. But I just put yesterday on my Facebook, I'm like, my job today is case manager because there's all these appointments. There's all these therapists that we're dealing with. And with my kids, because there's 6 of them still at home, then all of them have different therapies and stuff. It's probably 20 to 25 hours a week of therapies.
It really
just
is.
for the very kids. And then I know with your daughter, I mean, it's this whole world that we never expected. It's, you're kind of going on with your life and you realize there's a whole world out there that I didn't even know existed. And so just talk about a little bit about that, about just how things changed. But also I know you talk a lot about how Jesus is there for you, even in these strivings for perfection that never really result in things going as we planned.
Yeah, that striving for perfection really never goes anywhere.
No.
There is no end game. There is no goal. It's just like this black hole of striving and striving and striving, and nothing happens. Yeah, there was a whole world that just wasn't on my radar. I had 2, kind of traditionally abled children, and I just had never anticipated that our life would turn the way it did. And yeah, so after Avery was born, and Avery has very, very complicated medical needs, basically from head to toe, her body is impacted by this, this
Mm-hmm.
syndrome or disease that she has. And so, just our first introduction to the NICU was just this eye-opening experience of, this kind of suffering was never on my radar. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that we lived, kind of serendipitously about an hour and a half from a major children's hospital in our state was just, they were all so close, and the suffering was so profound, and it was just not anything that I had realized. It just did
Yeah.
not touch my life. And so we started in the NICU with her, and just that basic level of like children born so prematurely, it was like, oh my gosh, there is a whole world, there is a whole community of people that I have just never thought of, that I have never thought to serve. I have no idea what this is like. I have no idea how they've lived. And then we kind of transitioned to, she would, get a G tube and a trach and need a ventilator, and then, she'd be inpatient for different procedures. I don't even know how many procedures she's had done now, and we're talking like major skull reconstructions,
Yeah.
brain surgeries. The surgeon just cut off her cerebellar tonsils last week, which is just, I mean, we're cutting off parts of her brain. It's just crazy. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how else to describe it. And so then, as time went on, and really I was blogging about our life before, and then once Avery was born, I was just blogging to let our friends and family know what was going on with her. And it was a very efficient way of communicating. So I was not writing for what I thought was going to be an audience. And my blog just blew up,
Mm-hmm.
and people were messaging from all over the world. And we, at one point it was just hundreds of thousands of readers on this blog. And I realized that there was even more community than what was just, what I was seeing just in the hospital. There were people whose children had autism and all types of, behavioral things, and, other heart conditions. And they were walking similar things that we were walking. And I just realized how broad and beautiful this community was. And a lot of times it was because they were reaching out to me, and sometimes there were people that I would find on Instagram. I know there was a little girl who I found first. She was such a gift to me. I think I looked up the hashtag like trach baby. Avery had just
Mm-hmm.
gotten a trach, and so I found this mom, and she would post the most beautiful, joyful pictures of her little girl who had a trach. And it was like this light bulb went off in my head, like, this is not doom and gloom. This can really be a beautiful, purposeful, just lovely life that Avery can lead. And really watching this mom walk out her journey is what gave me the perspective and the encouragement to say, you know what, there is a lot of hope here. We can do this. This will be fine. And so, people found me that way and reached out, and I
Mm-hmm.
found other people that way. And I am just so grateful to be a part of this community, to witness this kind of power and joy and resilience, beyond what are happening in people's circumstances. I just get to witness that in so many people's lives. And I would never go back to the perspective that I used to have. I am just, I mean, I wish Avery did not have to suffer. I would change all that, but I am so, so grateful to have been able to be a witness in this kind of community. It's amazing.
Yeah, and what I love about I'm trying to remember, I think someone was talking about you, anyway, I don't remember how I found you on Instagram, but there's so much personality in her photos. I mean, she's just I love I like this one I'm looking at now, she had her little hands on her hips, and I mean, just it's just
Oh my,
so
the sass
yeah,
is out of this world.
yeah, and I love how, because I think people think, kids with special needs, it's like they're just they don't see them as like having these personalities and having
Mm,
this joy, and there's these other parts of life, and you have given us a glimpse into that in such a beautiful way that it's like, oh yeah, I could totally see this personality coming out of this little
Yeah.
person. And I think that's
Yeah.
what people appreciate. And then, there's the messages too. So there's this photo, of course, that's going to capture our attention, but then you're offering hope and you're offering encouragement. And like me, we live about 25 minutes from a children's hospital, and our daughter that has autoimmune disease was having to do infusions
Mm,
monthly, and but it's right there, it's so close. I'm so thankful. But going in that unit where she's getting her infusions for her autoimmune disease, there's kids with cancer, there's kids with
mm,
all these, and I'm like, we are so thankful, and I had no idea this was here. Like, we drive
yeah.
by the highway, I don't even know how many hundreds of times I've driven by, not even thinking of who's inside and what they're facing and what's going, what the parents are dealing with, what the kids are dealing with, and to step inside and see
Mm,
these beautiful teenagers getting, chemo, and I'm just like, wow, this is a whole new world, and I love that, even though things were hard and challenging, and they continue to be hard and challenging for you and for Avery, that you are giving so much hope to other people, and they have someone that they can look to and like, okay, I could look at this picture, I could cry a little bit for our situation, but then I could say, okay, it's okay, we could have hope here.
yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
So, and I know, you talk about, just trusting in God, but I would love to hear even some of your story, your backstory, before you even, had kids and stuff. How did things that impacted you in the past, um, help, or maybe stir up things from what you have already gone through?
Yeah, so I was raised Christian. My dad is a pastor. He still is, and he was when I was little. And so I always had, a relationship with God. I think probably for a lot of my childhood, I kind of piggybacked off of my parents' relationship. And
Mhm.
so I think for a lot of kids, people who are raised Christian, there's like a time where you kind of have to decide, how much of your relationship is your own personal experience and how much of it is something that you've kind of inherited. And it's a beautiful thing to inherit, do not get me wrong. You just have to kind of decide at some point, like what is my own theology, what makes sense to me, how do I wrestle with my faith, as a grown up, not just as a child who is just absorbing what
Mhm.
they're being
Mhm.
taught. And I had some challenging experiences as a young person. I have a history of sexual abuse and assault, and so and I did not tell anyone till I was an adult. So
Mhm.
there was a lot of private wrestling that you know looked like my trying to reconcile what I thought faith was with what was happening in my life that I hadn't revealed to anyone, and then trying to decide where God fit in with all that. And it's so interesting when you isolate yourself, and you are keeping your mouth shut about things that are happening or have happened. You have no perspective to know the truth, because when you keep it to yourself, your brain is doing all of the narrative
Mhm.
creating,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
it was really tricky. And so over time, I was in a very abusive relationship for very many years, a very long time. Um, and on the outside, the relationship looked fine, and no one would have known. Um, but it was pretty devastating. And over time, the narrative that I'd spun in my head was that God wasn't trustworthy, that
Mhm.
he had allowed this, and how could he? And really it became a big issue after I had my first child, my oldest son named Max. I had I didn't realize it was postpartum depression, or maybe more like postpartum anxiety. I did not realize it. And so I just had this kind of unearthing of this sense that, if God didn't protect me, why do I think he's going to protect my son? And
Mm.
so it looked like just, debilitating anxiety. I became like obsessed with Law and Order Special Victims Unit, that show. And so
Yeah.
I would just binge watch it to get like a leg up on how to protect my son, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, because it was not rational.
Well, I think, and these are the things, that, like, in our mind, we're just trying to keep ourselves safe and protect
Yeah.
ourselves. Like, and the ways we do that are so extremely different. Even I could see with our kids that we adopted from foster care, like the way they handle situations,
Yeah.
like a surprise trip this weekend, all of a sudden people are feeling unsafe. And I didn't even think about that. I'm like, hey, we're having a surprise trip. But they're like,
Yeah.
this is not how I was planning my weekend. I'm upset about this. And so it doesn't always have to make sense. I just want to confirm, affirm
Yeah.
you that sometimes in our efforts to keep ourselves safe, or it's because of those things in the past, but we have no idea that it's impacting how we deal with things
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
And it seems normal, that, your way of coping seems like reality, seems like the
Mhm.
right way
Mhm.
to do things. And so, I just didn't even realize what was happening. And so at that point, I just decided that, if God wasn't trustworthy, then I wasn't sure that this was for me. And so in my early 20s, and it had kind of been building, I would say probably
Right.
from 13 to 20, I just had the sense of like, I'm going along with this, but I don't know that it makes sense to me. And it's so ironic because I'm like, I was mad at God, which just affirms that I did believe he
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hello, you can't really be like, I don't believe in you anymore because I'm mad at you. And you go, well, you do still believe in him if you're mad at him.
Yeah.
So, at 20, I think I was 20. I had my son 2 weeks after I turned 19, and I was married at the time. And, um, I just had a crisis that looked like, I just like lit a match and set it to my life, and really everything imploded. And, got a divorce, and, was a single mom for a few years. And finally in the process of blowing my life up, people were like, what is happening? Why are you doing this? Like, who are you? We don't know you
Mm.
to be this. And it was, I went to counseling, and, finally told a counselor for the first time and I had been maybe slowly revealing the story to other counselors because I'd been in counseling since I was a teenager for other issues. And, I guess the counselor, this professional, you know, was able to kind of piece together like, oh my word, what? Like, there is so much more here than, was
Yeah.
obvious
Yeah.
to everybody. And so that kind of started the train of healing. Like, once people knew what had happened, I wasn't alone in my web spinning in my mind anymore. And so once other people could speak in, and I could begin this healing process, I really was able to kind of untangle my soul and my beliefs from this dark web that I'd created to protect myself, and to isolate myself and to keep things secret so that no one else would get in trouble, or so no one else would get hurt. And, I kind of had to do that faith wrestling for myself. After Avery was born, I had decided, before Avery was born, long before that, I did truly believe in God, and that I did think he was trustworthy, or I thought I believed that. And before she was born, I just felt like, the Lord had said to me maybe about a year before she was born, like, do you trust me? And I
Mm.
had thought, like, yeah, like, you know me, like, we just walked out this, huge, crazy thing. I've been through a lot of pain in my life. Like, yeah. And, and he just kept asking me that. And I was a little concerned at one point, like, what are you getting at? Like, sure, I trust you. Just don't mess with my kids. That was my thing that I'd say over and over. Like, yes, I trust you. Just don't mess with my kids. And at first it was a joke, like, I just feel
Yeah.
really strongly about my kids. Like, I was remarried at that point. I think my oldest son was maybe 4 when we got married. And then we, had a daughter, and then had Avery. And so, it had been a sweet ride for a few years up until then. And then Avery was born, and I really, really, really had to confront, really once and for all, did I trust God? Did I really trust
Mhm.
God, even with what was most precious to me, which at the time, you know, I did not realize I had made a tiny idol out of motherhood and out of my children. And so what I held most dear, because I'd already lost relationship, I had lost, respect and reputation in seasons earlier in my life. And I'd never had to say, yes, God, I trust you with my kids. I could trust him with anything else, but it was finally like, he had just kind of tapped me on my shoulder and said, I'm going to need you to be willing to surrender everything. And that was what I just call awful grace,
Mm.
excruciating, very necessary, so stinking painful. And so that's really a main theme of my book is, surrender about that. I had to learn, from years of just keeping my mouth shut about some of the things that had been happening when I was younger, not advocating for myself, really just self-betrayal,
Yeah.
for the purpose of trying to not rock the boat, to keep everybody
Mhm.
happy,
Mhm.
I felt like if I can handle all this, I'll suffer it as long as no one else is being hurt by it, which is never how things work out.
Right.
When
Right.
you're hiding things, you're never the only person who's getting hurt. So I had to learn after Avery was born how to rock the boat, how to advocate, and it was so it was so dire at times for her. It was literally life and death, and so I had to come to a place where it was like I have to trust that God can handle it when I rock the boat in my circumstance.
Mhm.
That He has my back, and that really you know, the Lord isn't looking for me to please people. It's that he just wants me to be honest, painfully honest with what's going on, less concerned with, my fear of man and more concerned with my fear of him, which at times, looked like having to stand up to doctors and say, no,
Yeah.
this is wrong. You have to do something. I can't leave here until you've made this right. And several times it literally saved her life. And that was something that i I couldn't have done as a teenager or a child. I just wasn't prepared for it. So there was so much about my history that having Avery made me confront, made me finally take a stand on, how do you speak the truth in love and not worry about how the boat gets rocked, how the people respond to you, whether they think that you're pushy or aggressive or whatever that looks like. And then just ultimately deciding, like, if all of this goes away, is Jesus enough?
Yeah.
If I lose it all, if he takes my kids, is Jesus still enough? Even if no good comes out of it. There was a point where, I had been blogging all this time, and people would reach out and say there was so much hope, they were getting hope, they were feeling encouraged, they were feeling all these things. And so for a long time, that became something that I held on to, which is, I could do anything as long as good is coming from it. There was just this obsession with purpose there, like
Right.
we're all suffering, but people are being helped. And so that's all that matters. And so I finally had to come to a place where it was like, is Jesus enough? Even if no one is helped, even if you
Mhm.
were on an island by yourself and suffering like your family is suffering, and no one ever saw, and no one was ever helped, and no one ever reached out to you and told you that your story blessed them, would Jesus still be enough? Would you still want to suffer well? And that looked like I just stopped posting for several months to say, it was part of really the grief journey. I was
Yeah.
I was holding on to purpose so hard because I didn't want to finish grieving, to the end of you just confronting really the darkness of it. I was so concerned with finding the silver lining all the time that
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to sit with the pain,
Yeah.
and not try to grasp the silver lining. And so that kind of looked like kind of the end of I would say the end of the initial grief journey. How about that? Because it
We'll
still
go
goes
there.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are always levels that you uncover as you go along. Like, oh, I hadn't even thought that this was going to be something that would hit me so deeply. Watching Avery suffer the way she has. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. That was
Yeah.
quite a long-winded way of
No,
saying all
that's good.
that.
Do you trust God? Can he be trusted? Meg Apperson, author of Sky Full of Stars, says yes. Her memoir reveals how faithful God is, how he has a purpose for our pain and suffering, and how we can trust him, even with life's smallest details. Pick up Sky Full of Stars wherever books are sold. But it's so good because, I mean, there's so many things going in my mind. First of all, talking about the grieving thing, and
Mm,
because I think we set up in our mind like, okay, with me even like, okay, we're gonna adopt all these kids, but look at their good lives are going to be changed, and I'm going to be able to help adoptive parents,
Oh
and
yeah.
all the things. Is like, okay, because I love helping people and reaching out,
Yeah.
but there's been the points I've been like bawling on my floor, and like, this is hard and this hurts, and I just had a teen blow up in my face when I'm just trying to help her,
Yeah.
and it's okay to like grieve. And there's even times like, God, you knew all this pain was
Mm.
coming and you still put it on our hearts so strongly to adopt. Like, I'm mad at you right now
Yeah.
because,
Like, wait, you did
this
this.
is not, yeah, like you put it in our hearts and like you connected us, and this hurts in this moment. And I've seen how like our other kids sometimes get hurt from, different kids acting out. And I'm like, I don't understand this, but it's okay to sit there. Like, God's not gonna be like, I can't believe you just said you're mad at me right
I
now.
know.
It's okay to sit in that, and it's okay to express that. And there's been times like, because I've written a book on calming angry kids, and I wrote a book on not grumbling. And sometimes we have grumbling and anger in our home, and I'm like, oh my
Oh
gosh,
yeah.
why did I even write books about those things? Like, this was so
Oh
dumb.
my gosh, I
And
totally relate to that.
like, clearly in my mind, I felt God saying, like, you don't always have to help people all the time. Like, just
Mm.
live your life without trying to sum it up in 3 points that someone else can walk away with. I'm like, oh, okay.
I love
Like,
it.
we'll do that. We'll do that today. And it's not easy. And we'll have bright spots and dark spots. And this, right now we're going a really hard season with one of our kids. And
Mm.
it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. God is still there. He is still faithful.
Yeah. And he made
And
us human, like
yeah.
our humanity is not a surprise to him. It's part of the design. And so I felt like in times where I was a little afraid because, I was upset, like wrestling with faith or like, God, I cannot reconcile your goodness with what I'm seeing. Avery has a trach and she was on a ventilator. So
Hmm.
at our children's hospital, there's a floor that's specifically for children, with airway struggles who are followed by a pulmonary team, and it's on the same floor as the oncology unit for children, the pediatric
Yeah.
oncology unit. And we spent a lot of time there, and that was probably the heaviest
Mhm.
experience. I mean, some of our ICU experience has been pretty heavy too, just because a lot of times there are children with cancer, in the rooms flanking Avery's. And so you just can't be in that space without this deep sense of reverence, for the life that's lived in those halls, for the words that are heard in those rooms. You just walk into it like, I it's just so heavy. It's so
Mhm,
heavy.
mhm.
And I remember being like, God, I cannot reconcile your goodness and your kindness and your mercy with what I'm seeing in this unit. It
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just it is just I don't really have a word to describe it. I know
yeah.
probably a lot of other people who have spent time in those units will say the same. And we weren't there for cancer, so it was just like, gosh, I'm just here because my kid has a trach, and these people around me are suffering in a way that is just so extreme. Like Avery and I have not suffered, and just wrestling with that question. I can't reconcile this. Please help me understand. And I felt the Lord say to me once, and it was a really hard thing. It was kind of a light bulb moment, but I still had to work through it a little bit, which is just that He said, you are not more merciful than I am. In my
Mhm.
wrestling with, you're so good and you're so kind and you're so merciful, and yet how can this be happening? Just that idea that I'm not more merciful. What's mercy in my mind is not mercy in the economy of God. That I felt like I needed to wrestle with this idea that, you know, pain and suffering was happening, and how could God be a part of it? He was just like, you don't need to wrestle with that. Like, that is
Yeah,
not your place. So, just there's just so
that's a good
much.
word right there, though. Like, I'm totally contemplating that right now with just my life. I'm like, "Oh my word, that is so good."
Girl, there
'Cause
is
I'm
so
like,
much there too. Because when you
uh-huh.
mix some of those good qualities like mercy or, justice or all those things that we can feel righteous about, when you mix that with pride, which is,
Mhm.
I am merciful. And so the pride is, my idea of mercy is what is true mercy. And then we are in a dangerous space. Even when we say I'm really justice oriented, and so my version of justice is biblical justice, that does not always line up.
Right. Yeah.
So that idea of like, oh my gosh, the way my pride works out, even in qualities that I would say are good, godly qualities, ways that our personality was crafted by God that is good and wholesome, is still, once it touches that little pride ship, even the good stuff can lean us down wrestling that is not a place for us to wrestle, I guess, if that makes
This is
sense.
so preaching to me right now because because we adopted, especially our older girls, we adopted when the youngest was 11, the oldest was 15.
Oh, wow.
And the stuff they live through, and more stuff
Yeah.
comes up, and then you think they're good, and then something else, and then they'll act out, and then you find out more, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
this is too much. But I'm like, oh my God, if this is me being prideful, like God, why didn't you stop this? Because I would have stopped this. Oh
Yeah.
my word. Okay, so you're so preaching to me right now. I'm gonna be wrestling with this like all weekend. Like this
I
is so
still
good.
am. I still
Yeah.
am. It's like a year's, just a very long process of having to confront, that idea
So
that
good.
I'm merciful, but, I only am when it's up next to biblical,
Yeah. This is so good. And I'm actually
things.
writing a novel right now
Oh.
on Miriam.
Oh,
And
good. Oh my
so
goodness.
yeah, so it was actually due. It's not turned in yet, but I'm almost getting there. But it's so funny because I'm like, these people are suffering, and even when the plagues first came, the Israelites had them too. Like
Mm.
I knew some of them were separate, and like halfway through, he separated them, but they still had the frogs. They still had the blood river. They still had the gnats that was in Goshen too, which I didn't even realize until you actually have to write a novel about it, and then you're like really having to pay attention.
Yes, now you're the expert. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness, and I'm like, why are you letting these people suffer? Like you sent
Yeah.
Moses, and then they don't have any straw, and then there's getting beat, and they've already been in bondage for 400 years.
Mm.
I'm my character. I might go back and weave some of these questions in. I might have to write
Yeah.
a note to Meg in the. Okay, this made me think a little bit deeper here, but it's so
That's
true
great.
because we're like, why God?
Mm.
And that is a pride thing. If we're thinking that we would have a better answer than what He has.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's
It's
so
a
good.
hard one. Yeah.
That is so good. I have so many things we could talk about, but I'm just like so just like on this topic right now. But
Good.
that was really good. It made me think about yesterday. I was listening to a sermon in the car, and John 11:42. It's Jesus talking when they took the stone away from Lazarus, and he said, he's praying out loud. He says, "You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of these people standing here, so that they
Mm.
will believe you sent me." And I'm like, just that whole like Jesus saying, God hears us, God hears me, God hears you, but I'm just saying it again to
That's right.
remind you that God
For
hears
your
us
benefit.
and
Yeah.
for our benefit. And so this is the whole thing. Like God is going to receive glory even out of these hard things, but we have to keep saying it. We have to keep praying out loud. We have to keep pointing others to Him,
Mm.
even in the midst of the hard stuff. Oh, this
Yeah.
is so good.
That is good. Oh,
I
that's
love
speaking
it.
to
I love it.
me. I go back and forth about, Instagram. It's sometimes really hard, even having a blog, just sharing my family, especially my
Mhm,
children,
mhm.
publicly. Sometimes that feels very, very scary.
Yeah.
And I have wanted to close up shop. I don't know how many times. Like, Lord, just take this from me. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want
Mhm,
to. I don't
mhm.
want to, be known by people on this level. And I've never felt like He released me from it. And so, just recently with Avery's last surgery, the messages that people would send me about the things they were going through, and how, hearing Avery's story and seeing how beautifully she suffers, with just, I mean, she is extraordinary. Avery is
Mm,
really,
yeah.
really extraordinary as a human. And, you know, hearing that is, it helps me kind of get over the hump sometimes of just
Yeah.
being like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then God really does receive glory. And really, that's all we're here to do, is have a relationship with Him and glorify Him in our lives, however that looks. So just what you just said about that verse. Mm.
And really that it is in this time of history that God is, I mean, I'm a homeschooling mom, home with all these kids, like,
Mm,
and maybe something I can share can help someone somewhere else. I mean,
yeah.
years ago, there would have been Instagram where, Avery's story had happened then that people would be blessed by her life.
Right.
It's just like God just put this in us in this unique time in history where we
Mm.
can just share about him, even through our hard stuff. And I think
Oh
that
yeah.
truly is where people can connect with. I remember for years and years, my first book came out in '99, and years before that, lots of rejection because I was just like, just paint this perfect picture of life and encourage people without really sharing any pain.
Oh
So
yeah.
when my first novel was about the Holocaust, my first nonfiction book was about me being a teen mom at 17 and encouraging teen moms. It's like once I started like opening it up and sharing my pain, that's where you impact people.
Yeah.
So that's where, Avery's story, your story, my story, my kid's story, as hard as it may be, and some days, we're wondering like if this story is even going to turn out good. 'Cause some days I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, is this child ever going to make a good decision? I do not know, but God will be glorified
He
through
will.
those stories.
Oh, you're so there's that, that we are here in this really unique time where we're able to glorify God while being at home, and I
Mhm.
people were, just not publicly.
Right.
I was homeschooled by my mom. She had 8 kids, and there no one knew publicly all the work and the toil and the sacrifice that she was doing privately. I kind of wish they had Instagram. She never would have been on it, but I kind of wished the world could have witnessed her motherhood. And I guess now they can see the result of it because we're all, grown up, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm probably the least grown up, but the rest of them are all good, all doing well. But yeah, just that, he gives us these stories, he gives us these
Mhm.
experiences and puts us right where he wants us in time, kind of like a nod to Esther, for such a time as this. We are
Yeah.
here right now for such a time as this. Mm,
So good. Oh my goodness. I
yeah.
could just feel like we could talk about this all
I feel like
day.
we need to write a book. What's going
I know.
on?
I'm like, what? This is so good. Oh, okay. So, let's circle back around to Sky Full of
Yeah,
Stars.
let's do it.
Yeah, for someone who's saying, okay, Meg story sounds amazing, and I'm gonna totally go follow her on Instagram, and I just want to see Avery and love on her from
Mm.
afar. How do you hope this book can really impact people in a new way with your story, like all together there in a book?
Yeah, so the book is much more personal than anything I've ever
Mhm.
shared on Instagram. I cover things like how kind of the crisis that we found ourselves in after Avery was born impacted my marriage. I have
Yeah.
never talked about that on any platform ever. So I think that's probably what I'm most excited to share with people, just the real story. And I think it'll surprise them because I I just have no interest in fluff. I have no
Yeah.
interest
Yeah.
in trying to paint a pretty picture with how life was. I mean, there was
Mhm.
beauty to it, but it was freaking hard, and
Mhm. Mhm.
and there is no perfect formula, for how to walk it out in marriage, when you're walking through something that's just it kind of disconnects you. Grief disconnects you because
Yeah.
you kind of not you kind of you have to grieve separately and in a way that's unique to you. And so I think I went into it thinking we were going to have this shared experience of grief, and we were not in a
And plus
very shared.
you're so wore down because
Oh
you're
yeah.
with Avery, he's with the other kids.
Yeah.
Well, this is like a daily thing in our house. It's like everyone's dealing with all the crisis. Then we flop into bed and like, oh, how are you?
That's
Like,
right. That's right. Like there's more to this than just this partnership of caring for people and
mhm,
doing
mhm.
basic things. Yeah, and we were apart for most of the first year after Avery was born. Like I lived in the hospital with her and he had the kids back home, and I'm just excited to share that story in a way that people haven't heard it yet. I think it will really really encourage people who are walking through some tough things,
Yeah,
relationship wise.
absolutely. And I think for people who already know you and follow you, it's just going to give them a deeper look. And for those who you're new to them, and it's just like all your stories there, and there's so much that they're going to be able to pull out of it. Especially like, hello, no one is having an easy time of it right now. Like
Right.
nobody in
Oh
the
my
world is
goodness.
like no problem, no problems.
Yeah.
Every single person. Which I just think this is again God's goodness of bringing your book out during this time.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
like everyone on the planet is surrendering their dreams of perfection.
Everyone
Like
is
everyone.
suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And quarantining together in relationship is just a
Hmm.
very unique way of living. So, yeah, I hope it really encourages people.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm enjoying the book. I know so many other people will enjoy the book, and I'm so thankful for you. And I'm thankful for you for sharing the hard stuff too, because again, that's going to be where people's hearts are changed, their lives are changed, and they'll get glimmers of hope in Jesus, which we
Yeah,
all need right now.
that's right.
All right. So, where can people connect? We mentioned Instagram, and we'll have all these in the show notes too. But where can people connect with you and find out more information about Sky Full of Stars?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably where I spend most of my time. That's where I post kind of our day-to-day stuff, and then I have that link tree in my bio that has
Mhm.
the different. I'm on my blog, which is forfinelives.com, and then it has all the links to all the places you can buy Sky Full of Stars, which should be anywhere you buy books, which is very exciting.
Yay! Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Well, Meg, I'm so thankful that you're here. I'm so thankful for your story and you sharing your heart. And I know others will be blessed.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our chat.
Well, friends, that was an awesome interview with Meg. I feel like we connected on so many levels of what God has done, even through our hard stuff that we never wanted to experience. And I'm going to be totally transparent here. There have been times I've been so overwhelmed with the pain of life that I've lifted my face to the ceiling and whispered, God, if you love me, how could you have allowed this to happen? And maybe you feel that way too. Maybe you know God is loving, but you wonder, how could God allow this into my life? If God truly loved me, how could this be happening? God's love and promise and faithfulness shine in hard moments. And I love so much how Meg was able to share that today. And I love the title, Sky Full of Stars, that even in the darkness and only in the darkness can we really see God's faithfulness shining like stars. So for today's Walk It Out verse of the week, for God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. And that was 2 Corinthians 4:6. Again, I'm going to read it again. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. And it really is during those dark times that God's light shines through the darkness. And when we look to Christ, instead of just lifting our faces to the ceiling and complaining, when we look to Christ, there we can see the light of truth, the light of hope, and the light of glory. So I am just so thankful for Meg and her story and Avery and Meg's other kids. And in the book, we didn't even go into all the details, but there's been other medical challenges with some of Meg's other kids. And I know when you read it, you will just be amazed how God has shown up to Meg and her family time and time again. But first, let me just pray for you. So, dear God, I just pray for every listener out there. And I know so many of us are just going through dark times right now. We wonder, why is this happening? And we don't understand. And I think we will never understand until eternity. But I pray, Lord, that in this darkness, your light may shine. We may look to you. We may look to your face. We may see Christ in new ways. And the love and the light of God will shine through the darkness. I pray for Meg. I pray for her family. I pray for Avery, who is so just inspiring. And if you will just bless Avery, Lord, that would be amazing. So thank you for everyone here. Thank you for every listener. And I pray that they will be blessed. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, friends, thank you so much for tuning in to Walk It Out. I just love having the opportunity to share these friends, new and old, with you. I love that I get to pull away, um, have conversations, share about the deep things of God, and then go back to normal life. In fact, when I started recording this outro, I was holding a hamster for my son. He was cleaning up the cage. So if you happen to like hear a little squeak, yeah, I mean, not a hamster, it was a guinea pig. Sorry, a guinea pig on my lap. This is real life. This is just me as a mom of all these kids pulling away to be able to have these conversations, to talk with amazing people, and to just share what God is doing in our lives. And I think that's so important. So many times in our busy day, we look at our to-do list and we think, I don't have time to pull away. I don't have time to really have conversations or connect with people or listen to a podcast. But really, when we do that, we can be encouraged and inspired. I also wanted to mention something else. I have a new store up on my website. So if you just go to trishagoyer.com, and you will see in the top header, it says shop. And so if you click on the shop, I have most of my books are on sale right now. And we would be so grateful if you would be interested in picking up one or two. They'd make wonderful gifts. Because of COVID, my speaking season did not happen. So 6 conferences were canceled. I had already ordered all the books to sell at those homeschool conventions. And now they're in my garage and in my breakfast nook because we put up a bookshelf with all these books so we can fill the orders. But anyway, if you go to shop there on my website, trishagoyer.com, you'll see that most of them are on sale, but I have a special bonus for you, my Walk It Out listeners. For your first order, if you do the coupon code WELCOME, all capital letters WELCOME, you will get 50% off your order. So yeah, some of my brand new releases are like $11.99, $13.99. You put in that WELCOME as a coupon code and you will get them for 50% off. Now, I don't know how long I'm going to keep that up there. I think for a while. So think about books you want or ones you might be interested in giving for the holiday and use that coupon code WELCOME. Well, friend, again, thank you so much to tuning in to Walk It Out. I pray that you are blessed and inspired.
Thanks for listening to Walk It Out. Head over to the show notes for this podcast and all past episodes at www.walkitoutpodcast.com. If you love the show, share it with someone you know who can make a radical difference in the world. We love new friends. See you next time.